This is the last video in the current Bagration Soviet War Diary series. The previous videos have covered painting and building the force for Operation Unthinkable. In this video I want to talk about how the tournament went. I also want to look at what worked for me on the table and what didn't. And I want to have a bit of a discussion about what we get out of our hobby. There isn't any better way to say this. I lost. Played 3 games, lost 3 games. I loved it. I had a ball. 2 of the games were loss-loss draws. One was still anybody's game to win, and I had the upper hand in the other one. But we were all a bit rusty and play was a bit slow. So while these games were technically losses, I wasn't unhappy with my performance. The middle game of the day was a solid loss to a skillful opponent. I played Adam Brooker, the tournament organiser. He's a solid and experienced player and he just straight up outplayed me. I was playing my Russians very aggressively and was too focused on pushing IS-2s down one flank and not enough on defending my own objectives. It was extremely satisfying to watch his beautifully painted British Sherman squadron being handled effectively on the table. As I said before, I lost all 3 games and I had a fantastic day. Let me tell you a little secret. Losing used to bug me. I would get very frustrated and angry at myself and felt my performance on the table reflected poorly on me. On more than one occasion I considered giving it all up. Truth be told, I'm not a very good Flames of War player. I suck at Team Yankee too. Once I get my Fate of a Nation and NAM forces finished, I can probably suck at playing those games as well. And it doesn't matter. The Western Australian Flames of War crew are a great bunch of guys. We play games, commiserate over bad dice rolls and can't wait to get together and do it again. Somewhere along the way I got to know these guys better and it didn't matter that I suck. Back in 2018 I watched a video from Uncle Atom on Tabletop Minions titled "Are You Mediocre at Your Hobby?" In the video he suggests that you don't need to be excellent at your hobby, you just need to enjoy it. I guess I've taken that lesson to heart, and I'm enjoying myself more. Don't get me wrong, I like to win games, or give a better showing on the table, or paint my miniatures better. I just don't want it enough to not enjoy the hobby if it doesn't happen. And people are in this hobby for different reasons. One player at the tournament told me he likes painting but isn't really into playing. But he comes along and plays when something is organised. His miniatures are absolutely beautiful. I don't really enjoy painting, but I love assembling kits and researching the historical aspects of the game. Everyone gets something different out of it. What's your focus? What do you enjoy most of this hobby and what don't you like? Let us know in the comments below. But that's enough about me being a loser. Let's talk about models on the table. Firstly, the IS-2s. They frightened the dice off everyone I played, and did very little. Their armour was great, but their low rate of fire combined with slow firing meant they didn't hit much. Most opponents were 4+ to hit, and if they were concealed or gone to ground or at long range, I was usually looking at 6s or 7s, once even 8s. If they did hit, it was great, but it just didn't happen anywhere near often enough to be worth the points. However, they did hold people's attention and drew a lot of fire. That kept the heat off a lot of the rest of my force. The IS-85s were better, but poor dice rolling stopped them hitting much. So let's talk about the star performer, the KV-8 flame tanks. These were an experiment, but they worked really well for me. Their stats are dreadful. They're hit on a 2+. They're reluctant, so they get a 5+ motivation. But my KV-8s were crewed by maniacs. The 2 times they were bailed out, they rolled 6s to get back in and keep rolling. Speaking of rolling, however, I did roll 15 flame dice needing just one 5+ to clear the objective in the last game, only to roll nothing above a 3. The SMG company rode the KV-8s as tank riders, dismounting before the KV-8s trundled up and flamed the dug-in troops while the dismounts then assaulted in to clear out the survivors. Running the troops as tank riders was a risk, but everyone was too busy shooting IS-2s to bother the KVs until it was too late. So the KV-8s were more effective than I was expecting. definitely my star performers of the day. Repeat bombardment was something I knew would whittle down dug-in troops, but in combination with the SMG troops and flamethrowers, the ZIS-3 guns were worth their points. These weren't stars, but they did solid service. I'd use them again. Ranging in is hard for Soviet units, so I was super careful when placing my initial bombardment ranged-in markers. I usually stuck them on an objective and just kept pounding it. I hadn't realised the BA-64 observer didn't help my battery's skill for ranging in, so it wasn't very useful except for line of sight, seeing where my guns couldn't. Aircraft is something I haven't done much with. They always seemed like a lot of points for a unit that only turns up occasionally, but the Sturmovix worked fine. I used bombs and rockets to good effect. They knocked out half a platoon of M10s at one point. So they worked okay when they turned up, but I only faced 2 opponents with AA, and with one of them I managed to place my planes just out of range of his 2cm guns. It might have been a very different story against an opponent with more AA assets. But Sturmovix have pretty good saves. After all the hassles I had painting them, I'm glad they ended up being worth it. I was expecting the infantry to do better in assaults, but they got badly chewed up. My suspicion is that's more due to my infantry coordination skills than anything inherently wrong with the units. So that's how my tournament went. No wins, but a lot of fun. I was pleased I seemed to have managed to overcome my frustration at losing, and I didn't feel I made a bad showing on the day. The list I built seemed okay. The IS-2s were less use than expected, but the KV-8s were much more. I remain convinced it's less about crafting the perfect list and more about being able to play to the strengths and weaknesses of the list you have. Thank you for following me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed seeing the list getting built. And finally, one last thank you to the players from the Western Australian Flames of War crew. You're a great bunch, and we have welcomed in tournament organiser Adam Brooker, who has moved to WA. Thanks, Adam, for organising this event. You might remember Adam as the face behind Dice of War, supplier of specialist dice for Wargaming. Come to think of it, Adam, we should talk about some of those terrible dice rolls I had on the day.